Let's talk about some budgeting. Okay, the most fun part about building a computer is clearly when you got a budget. You know what I'm saying? Okay, bet. Look, you can't just go into a computer project without having everything. That's probably the worst thing you can do. Like, don't I have half the parts, let's do it now, and then forget about it, lose some parts a week later, and then try to finish the computer. Don't do that. Make sure you have everything. Be organized about this. Okay? That's the first tip. Now let's debunk some myths. Let's talk about some budgeting myths. Okay, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars to build a good computer. Especially for video games, you don't need to buy an RTX 1080. You don't. It's cool, that'd be awesome to have. I wish I had one. But you don't need it. You can build a good PC for around $1,000 and still play video games very well. Budget in whatever accessories you're gonna buy. That includes your case, your keyboard, your mouse, your headphones, because the last thing you want is to have an amazing computer and not a good keyboard or a mouse. Because I don't know, I ran into that problem when I built my computer where I built my computer, everything was awesome, but then I had a 2005 monitor, I had the Windows default keyboards, I had a little wireless mouse that I got at Staples for $10 because I was just out of money and I couldn't buy any of those parts. So I had to wait 6 months for Christmas and get those. So you don't want to do that. You want to make sure you have the keyboard, you want to make sure you have all that stuff when you finish your computer, because in my opinion, I think it's one of the most important parts of your PC. It's the extensions of it. Some other things, there's no shame in buying pre-used or, older models of graphics cards, or any parts for that matter, but mostly graphic cards. You maybe don't want to buy a secondhand CPU or something, because something's probably wrong with it. But if you go to, Micro Center or Newegg, you can find a lot of refurbished or previously bought but returned graphics cards that are going to be seriously marked down from their original price. So you can maybe find last year's RTX graphics card for a much cheaper price if it was someone who returned it. Again, it's an inside component of your computer. It's not like people are going to judge you for it. It's a lot cheaper, it can save you a lot of money, and is a great investment to buy, just a pre-used. Really, I don't know if this goes without saying, but you don't need to spend all the extra money on RGB components. It's nice to have, but RGB RAM isn't gonna help you with anything. So, and it's much more expensive. So if you're on a strict budget, don't go all out yet. Stick with the basics on this one. And yeah, another important thing is if you're gonna be doing graphics intensive games, then you're gonna have to spend more money on a computer. If you're just gonna be making Excel graphs or going on Chrome or something, then you don't need to build as strong of a computer. So you gotta understand what you're gonna be using this for. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're gonna be playing a video game, but it's important not to shell out too much money or too little money. You want to find the ballpark that's best for you. So let's get into it. You have PC Part Picker, which is a great resource if you're buying everything from scratch, you don't have any parts at your house, and you can essentially build your computer online.
So here I am on PCPartPicker.com. This is the System Builder tab. Essentially, it lists every single possible component you can put into your PC. So that's CPU, cooler, motherboard, memory, storage, video card or GPU, the case, power supply, all that stuff, including the operating system. and any other software you might need. So essentially from this website, you can log in, create an account so everything gets saved. You start off, choose a motherboard, for example. You can go in and here are all the available motherboards they have and all the prices right here. Of course, you can price match things online, find a cheaper deal, stuff like that. But then you can just add it to your build, and then it will be able to detect if something's compatible. So then when you go on to choose, for example, the memory, just choose a random one. I'll add this one. It will tell you that there's no compatible issues. And it will also tell you the estimated wattage, which will be helpful for discovering the power supply unit and how big of one you need to buy. So I'm going to take this off for now. But this is a really great resource to use and can really help you organize your build and be able to tell if it will work and all the parts are going to be compatible once they're all sent to your house. So, if you're not planning on using PC Part Picker for building your computer, then I'd still recommend making some sort of list. By using the website, you're at least going to have a very streamlined way and a very organized way of keeping track of the parts you have, the parts you don't have, and if they work together or not. So, I'd recommend just making a pen and paper list of all the parts you need in order to build a computer. In the link in the description, the first one, I'll be putting a Google Doc that I made that's just a quick checklist about every single part, which I'm about to go through now.
Let's start off by talking about motherboards. It is the center of your computer. Everything branches off of it, everything kind of stems from it, and you want to make sure you don't cheap out on it. You want to make sure it is to your liking. You want to make sure it has all the basic things you want. If you want one with a built-in Wi-Fi card, find it. If not, you can order an extra one. Find one that has the right ports you want. Don't think that the video one's just USB ports, display ports, stuff like that. You want to make sure it has slots for the RAM you want, for the CPU and graphic card you want. So you want to make sure this is to your liking, because it's very important that this is good, because everything kind of based off of it. Next, you're going to want to find a CPU in your budget. You really don't need to go crazy with this. You don't need to buy the newest i9. You really you can go for an i5 if you need to. There's no shame in that. Just find one that works well for you. Don't break the bank with this, but it's an important piece to have. You're probably not gonna want to go refurbish on this. You want to buy your own, but find one that's in your budget. If you have the budget for the newest Intel i9, go for it. If you don't, you can go for an i5 or an i7. They're a couple years old. They might be a little bit slower, but honestly, you probably won't notice a difference. That's what a lot of things boil down to. You probably won't notice a difference. Next, you're going to want to find a graphics card. This is the part that people probably get the most excited about, and I get the most excited about, because it is pretty exciting. You want to make sure that it's the right GPU for you. If you have the budget to shell out $2,000 on a GPU, go for it. But if you can find a reused one or an old one that's been refurbished, go for it. It's much cheaper. And another really important part is that you want to make sure that your graphics card has the right outputs for the monitor that you want. You don't want to have to deal with adapters and all that stuff. So if you want to have a triple monitor setup, make sure you have 3 outputs that are all the same port you like, whether it's HDMI, DisplayPort, VGA, any of that stuff. It's important to look into that. Next, you want to talk about memory. Again, 4 is probably too little for memory. It's the basic you need to run Windows 64-bit. But if you have the extra money, it is definitely worth going to 8 gigabytes of RAM, whether that be 2x2x2 or 2x4s. It's a worthwhile investment to make. It's gonna make your interactions on your computer much smoother and much faster. So it's important to go for 8 gigabytes over 4 if you have the money for it. Usually it's easy to find memory. Once you have the motherboard, you just have to kind of look it up on its website. or on its Amazon or any website, and it will usually say what kind of memory it will take. It will say the pin number, the amount of pins in it, like whether that's 186, 250 something. You just got to match that up with the RAM you got. And again, you can just find RAM on Amazon by looking up that number. If not, then you can use PC Part Picker to find something that works well for you. If you have the money to go for 16 gigabytes or 12 gigabytes or any, multiple of 4, go for it. It makes the computer experience more like the more basic computer stuff, like switching between Windows tabs and Chrome and internet browsers. They make it a lot smoother. So I think it's a good investment to make. Storage now. Okay, let's talk about some storage options. I think storage is really important. You don't want to be running out of it. You don't want to have like an abundance of it. You really just got to see if there's like available. You got to really see what's available and what you want. The two biggest forms of storage, you have hard drives and solid state drives. In my experience, solid state drives are going to be a lot quicker, but they're also much, much more expensive. For a much smaller, much lower amounts of storage, it's much more expensive. And then you have hard drives, which are much cheaper, but aren't as fast and a little more reliable, in my opinion. And then, of course, you have all the different variations of it. You have solid-state hard drives, which are kind of like a middle ground, which are a little more expensive than hard drives and a little bit slower than solid-state drives. So it's kind of like a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none situation. But usually you can find a lot of storage that's fast and a bit cheaper. So I'd recommend that, but it's always worth checking out if you can buy a small SSD to put Windows on, the operating system, and your important programs. So your computer startup is quick, the computer processes when it's like starting up is quick, and your favorite apps run a lot faster. And then you can buy a larger second hard drive where you put a majority of your stuff, like video files, general files, your games, your apps, stuff like that. And you don't need them to run as fast. You don't need them to be as smooth. They're still going to run fine, but you don't really need a crazy amount of storage. So I think buying the two hard drives, the solid state and the hard drive, is a good investment and can allow for a good experience on the computer. Let's talk about power supply units. If you're using a website like PC Part Picker, it's going to be really easy to find a PSU that works with it, with your computer. Usually, you don't really have an issue where you don't have enough cables. In my experience, at least, every PSU I buy is overkill, and I don't use half the wires on it. So I got to kind of figure out what's going on with that. But really, you want to go simplest is sweetest. You don't need a crazy PSU. You just want one that's stable. You don't want to buy like an off-brand one. I'd recommend buying, a Corsair or a name brand that's well known, because if something goes wrong with your PSU, it can cause serious problems for the rest of your computer. You just want to make sure that the main ports on your PSU are going to match up with the ones on your motherboard and graphics card. So that's the ones like the 16-pin one that plugs into the motherboard, 8 or 6-pin that plug in the graphics card. Most PSUs will have these, but it's just a thing to double check. Stay organized with it. But really, go simple, but go like specific. Don't get an off-brand. Don't get an off-brand PSU for this part. Maybe for RAM, you can find something that doesn't have a big name on it, but for PSU, you want that stability. Okay, let's talk about cases. That's right, computer cases. Can make your computer look beautiful. This is what people are going to see. So you don't have to break the bank with this if you're running low on money, but buying a good case is worth it because it can hold all your parts. You really just want the case to be a shell, to be protection, to make sure it has airflow and to protect the parts inside of it. I'd recommend looking for a case that has the fans built into it, because that's a whole other thing you're going to have to look into. They're pretty simple, but a case with built-in fans is really nice. And there's some extra stuff, extra accessories that you might want to consider, such as a DVD drive. Most people don't really need them, But if you plan on ever burning a CD, or if you want to buy a disk drive, a disk version of Windows, it's worth looking into. They're cheap and you can find them in a lot of places, and who knows when you're going to watch a DVD or something. Some other little things. A Wi-Fi chip. If your motherboard doesn't have built-in Wi-Fi, or if you don't plan on using Ethernet, buying a good Wi-Fi/Bluetooth chip could be really helpful. I know Intel makes a combined one that's Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. I'll link it. It's really, really nice. And it works really well. And it's a worthwhile investment if you don't already have the Wi-Fi built into your motherboard or not using Ethernet.
Along with buying a CPU, you're going to want to purchase a CPU fan. If you're using PC Part Picker, they're going to outline this process, but really you can just go for the stock simple ones that you find. They aren't too expensive, but it's going to be very important to managing the heat within your computer and making sure that none of your components are overheating. So that's another part you kind of have to look into and buy. When you're ordering your parts, you're also going to want to order a small tube of thermal paste, which is an underratedly important part of making sure there is good airflow and heat flow inside your computer. It's going to be used on your CPU cover between the CPU and the CPU fan. Also, I also want to mention that you should order your operating system. In this case, probably Windows. There's many ways to install and download Windows, and I'll explain how that process works. But if you go on Windows website, you can either order a DVD to get Windows on your new computer, or you can make a thumb drive that has the necessary files and you can buy a key. These keys are kind of expensive. They're like about $100 for standard Windows, but you're going to need it if you want to have a functioning computer.
Some other things. Again, I want to reiterate the idea that make sure you have money left over to spend on a keyboard and a mouse, because really this is going to be how you're interacting with your computer. A good monitor, a keyboard, and a mouse are going to make your experience a much, much better. So it doesn't matter how good your computer is. If your monitor is awful, then your experience is going to be awful. So it's always worth, looking into good monitors that you can purchase. It doesn't need to be anything crazy expensive. Just something that can run 60 hertz or above and can plug into your GPU and works well for you. And then that alongside whatever kind of keyboard preference you want, whether that be, mechanical, chiclet, RGB, go for it. Same with mouse. If you prefer the simpler ones or you prefer the more complicated one with a bunch of side buttons. Again, it's important to look into this during the budgeting step and not forget about it until the end of the process when you have a working computer, but you realize that you have a bad monitor, a bad keyboard, and a bad mouse. It might make it a lesser experience. So that pretty much covers all the things you need to budget. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope your projects are going well. So in the next video, I'm going to be talking about setting up the motherboard and the steps you need in order to put in the CPU, the RAM, video card, and Wi-Fi chips if you have them. Thanks. I'll see you next time.